Hi everyone, I thought we'd go through a lovely lavender field today, so I'm going to very quickly go through the drawing with you. It's nice and simple. So I'm going to do a little bit of a horizon line. It's about 2/3 of the way up, just over halfway. And then I want you to choose a point where this lavender is going to run to, a vanishing point. So rule of thirds, I would put it possibly here. So this is my vanishing point. And then what I'm going to do is run a line that way. And you're basically going to run several lines. So you've got rows of lavender fields. So they come into that point. See how that's forming. So this is just linear perspective. And then as you come this way, again, you're still coming from the point. It's getting wider as it comes to the bottom. And as they go further away, you need to get those lines to go narrower so you get that sense of perspective happening. Then we're going to keep it really, really simple. We're just going to have a few trees within the background. Okay, so the paper that I'm on is a Saunders Waterford block. It is a cotton paper, 12 by 9. It's perfect size for the camera, works really well. It's a block, so it's taped down, so it keeps it nice and stable for me. I'm going to be using some Daniel Smith colours today, but what I will do is I will talk you through the other colours you could possibly use, because I know that not everybody has Daniel Smith. So I will definitely talk you through the common colours that I would use if I was doing this with students. So brushes wise, I have got out my wash brush, my Lard Squirrel wash brush, around number 10 and around number 6. I will use a sponge. I'm going to use a little bit of masking fluid as well as we go along. Okay, so I'm going to mix up a couple of colours first. So I'm just popping a little bit of water into 2 wells. I'll talk you through these colours. So this is my round number 10. I'm dipping into some cerulean blue. So this is a Daniel Smith cerulean blue, but there are plenty of other cerulean blues. If you didn't have a cerulean blue, you could use a cobalt blue, you could use an ultramarine blue. You could even use a phthalo blue. This is basically a blue going within the sky. Just going to test these colours out so you can see. So I've got a nice mix of blue there. Then I want to make a fairly dark green. So the colours that I've popped out here, I've got green gold. In fact, I've got a tiny bit too much water in there. Let me just take a bit out. I only need a dab of water in that one. So green gold, beautiful colour. You could use a bit of sap green. And I need to make this green darker. So I have got here some ultramarine blue. Just going to test that. So that is fairly vibrant. If I take a little bit of red in, it'll just neutralise it a little bit. So this is quinachrome rose that I'm just taking in there. That's the rose that I'm using. You could be using a permanent rose. Can you see the difference there? It's a much more neutral green. I'll talk you through the colours and what I might use as we go along. Just give my brush a really good rinse now. You see I've got a bit of kitchen towel. You should be able to see everything that I am doing. So clean water. I'm coming on with my wash brush and I'm going to come right the way to that horizon line. Get a nice even coat on the sky. Nice sheen, no puddles. Where it's wet, it's shiny. Where it's dull, it's dry. So you just get down at eye level and check that out. Rinse my brush again, just to double check. And I'm coming in with a cerulean blue. Now the Daniel Smith does tend to granulate, and this is one of the things I love about it. I don't often get to use this when I'm teaching, so it's quite nice to have a little play when I'm doing a video. Nice circular motion. I'm pushing the brush down. Creating this nice cloudy sky. I'm thinking Norfolk lavender here. Norfolk lavender fields. So it's already got some really lovely granulation. I'm going to just pick up a little bit of ultramarine blue onto the end of that brush. I've not rinsed it, just so that I'm getting a different tone coming in. So this is into the neat ultramarine blue. Letting it do its thing. The beauty of watercolour and the beauty of the Daniel Smith watercolours especially is to just let them float around and do the thing on the page. So that's a really nice sky. I'm pleased with that. I'm going to swap down to my number 6 now. Again, check it's clean, dab it off. I'm coming into this green mix. And I'm just going to dab towards the bottom. So I'm watching how much it's flowing. Just dabbing very lightly on that bottom edge and watching this flow up. I want a variety of heights so that it's not too uniform. Dab a bit more into this one. Now I'm biding my time. It's flowed really nicely and it's got a really lovely softness to it, but I want to add a bit more depth in places. That means it needs to just settle and dry out a little bit. And you can see there's still quite a lot of sheen on this, so I'm waiting for that sheen to go. Patience. You see where I'm coming in here, it looks much darker. So I'm getting a variety of tone by waiting for the paper to just dry a little bit. It's giving me like 2 levels. I've got that distance and then I've got one in front of it. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's dried really lovely. I'm going to mix up a couple more colours. So I've just put another little squirt of water in here. So this is the Quinachrone Rose. You could use permanent rose. You could use alizarin crimson. It tends to be a bit more muted. Alizarin crimson. So I've got that nice pink there. It's always nice to have a nice undertone. And then here I've got one of my favourite Daniel Smiths, which is Cobalt Violet, which is a perfect colour for lavender. If you haven't got this, rose and cobalt will make something very similar. Rose and ultramarine will make something very similar. You see that beautiful colour. I've also still got that gold mix, and I may dip into some lemon yellow as we're going. So the basis now is to get a real nice even wet in wet base on this bottom, and then we can start to work in. Work with this perspective that we've drawn in as well. So I'm going to wet the whole of the bottom section. Nice even coat, and I'm picking up my round number 10, checking it's clean. You'll notice that I take off the excess water on the kitchen towel because I've already got my water in here, so I don't need more. And then I'm going to start to stroke some of this rose in. And I'm following that same angle from the vanishing point. So we're following that round now. I'm drawing with the brush. So it's a really useful skill to have. Keep drawing with your brush. You're not looking to get an even coat. You're wanting the colour to disperse in different places, really. So don't try and make it look too even. Give my brush a rinse. Then into the Cobalt Violet. Again, not even. What I want is to see some of that rose coming through. There's no point in putting the rose there if we don't see it after. It's just about having the confidence to let the watercolour do its thing. I'm going to come along that back line. Nice bold strokes. Circular motion. So just towards this front section, a bit like when I did the clouds, I'm pushing the brush down. Circular motion, just so I get that nice base starting to appear down here. I'm going to swap down to a number 6, pick up some of this green gold ultramarine mix that we did earlier and just stroke that through. So what I'm trying to do is just hit a few of the lines. Remember, this is just your base. This is giving you an indication. Sometimes you lose your lines and this helps find your lines again. See a few lines appearing there. I'm going to go back to my number 10. I'm going to twizzle this way. I'm going to come into this green mix just come along this base line. So I find it easier to paint strokes like this downwards. You can do it the other way round. It's just my personal preference. Just starting to get a base in. I'm really showing you how I'm drawing with the paintbrush. Getting these different lines appearing. You don't want this to be too even. Dipping into a bit of water, I'm going to dip into some neat green gold. This could be neat sap green, could be hooker's green, it could be a mix of something yellow and blue. Just creating a little bit more of a base down there. Just twizzle this back round. That's given me a really nice base. So I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so we can see how pretty this is looking already. And what I'm going to do, I've got a earbud or cotton bud here, and I'm just going to take a little bit off with a pair of scissors. I want it to be less round. And I'm hoping if I just trim a bit off, that will make the surface a little less round. I've got some masking fluid, and I'm going to dip the cotton bud into the masking fluid, and then I'm going to come on and just do little dabs. This is a start to form some lighter lavender. I tend to prefer to use cotton buds or colour shapers or knitting needles than brushes, because your brushes do get damaged by the masking fluid, so don't use brushes. So I'm starting quite lightly and then pressing harder as I go down, so I'm trying to get sort of a lavender shape. As many random ones as I can get, and odd bits and dots will work as well. So this is a clear masking fluid, so you're not going to see it until I pop the next layer of paint on. Do make sure it's dry before you come on, because it will pull the paint off, but it's a great way to do this, because you've got a layer of paint underneath that's going to give you that lighter. Just do a few random dots. You basically want it to phase into the rest, gradually dissipate, if that's a word. So you don't want to end up with a definite line. So I'm doing a few, going backwards. Okay. I appreciate that bit's hard to see, but when the next layer of paint goes on, you will see that. I'll dry that off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I've just popped in a bit more of the cobalt violet here, and I'm doing a mix of green here. So this other green had run out, so I have got a blob of green gold into a bit of water. I'm going to take a tiny bit of the lemon yellow in that to really brighten that up. And I'm going to take a dash of that mix across and then add some ultramarine. So I've got a dark green. When I'm going to do some sponging now, and when you do sponging, It uses a lot of colour. So that's that darker green. It's not quite as dark as the one in the background. That's a bit more muted, that's fine. And then this is my lighter green, so I've got two greens there ready to go. Okay, so let me talk to you about a sponge. So this is a natural sponge. It has got lots and lots of bobbly bits, nice manageable size. You want one that has lots of bobbly bits. Sometimes you can get arty sponges, they're not as good. You want to search out for a natural sponge that you can see and can see these bobbly bits on them. You're going to wet it really well. You're going to wring it out. Then you're going to dab it to take off all the excess moisture. The more moisture you can get off, the better. It's nice and soft, so it's easy for me to manipulate, but I don't want too much moisture in there because it's going to pick it up. The other thing to talk about with sponging is you're better with a flat palette. So this palette here, these daisy palettes, have got a flat well. So when I dip in, I'm not dipping into a bowl full of paint and it's not soaking too much up. I can dip quite lightly and that helps with sponging. So you're going to look for a nice bobbly bit on the sponge. You can squeeze. You're going to take up a little bit of paint. Now if you're worried, test it first. So you can have a little test and know how it's going to work. You're going to dab on nice and lightly. So we're going to start to create the lavender. So this is with the cobalt violet. As I'm dabbing, I'm lifting up and I'm twisting in the air so that every time I dab, I get a different mark. I don't want the marks to be the same. If I go dab, 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 I have a pattern. Dab, twist in the air, dab. So the pattern changes every time. You will find that you go through a lot of paint when you're sponging, and it's a gradual process. You don't want it to get too wet. It's a nice and delicate touch. So I'm going to come along first of all, and we're going to build up a couple of layers. I want to see those colours behind still. Whilst you've not got much on the sponge, that's the perfect time to come right at the back and start to create a little bit of light texture. Remember, you can squeeze so that you don't go over your horizon line. And I want you to come over the green lines, over the pink bits. This is about netting all this together now. A little bit more paint. As with most things watercolour, it takes a bit of practice, and I don't want you to be disheartened if you don't get it straight away. Sponging is wonderful once you get it. It helps to have the right bit of sponge, but practice is a lot of it, and making sure that it doesn't get too wet. So already you're starting to feel a depth there. I'm going to rinse that out. If I was to come on now with another colour, I want to take a little bit of the pink on and I want to come back on with the violet again. But if I do that now, what's going to happen is it's going to be too wet. It's all going to start to blodge together and look like a splodgy mess, which we don't want. So it's about patience, using the hairdryer and being nice and delicate. So what I'm going to do whilst I've still got this layer on is I'm going to layer up a bit of the green here. So this is a little bit of the light green coming in at the bottom. So that's starting to build that up, and then I'm going to dip straight back into the dark green. Keep that nice and low. just along that bottom edge. Okay, so I'm going to dry this one off. Okay, so I've rinsed my sponge off, I've changed my water so it's nice and clean, and again I've just taken the excess moisture off this sponge. I'm going to come back in, I'm going to take a little bit of, I'm just going to take a dab of this off. I don't want too much, so I'm just taking a dab off onto the kitchen towel, just doing that. So I've got a little bit of this rose, because it's going to be quite potent. So I'm dabbing through with this one now. You can see how potent that is. What I'm trying to do is pick out some lighter areas. So the rose is going to shine through a little bit more in a lighter area. So it's the easiest way to do this is to see it within your picture already, if you can see it. So I have got areas that are lighter, but that doesn't always work that way. The beauty of watercolour is it doesn't always work that way. So you might just have to pick out an area and think, right, I want that to be a bit lighter. It's just helping you to give a little bit of extra tone into the picture. And try to make it so it fades out gradually. It's not too striped. You want it to gradually dissipate. I think that's my new word, dissipate. So rinse that out, wring it out really well. Actually got a bit of kitchen towel here that I'm screwing it out on, just to make sure it's nice and dry. And then squeezing the sponge again, I'm going to pick up some more of the cobalt violet and come in lower. So I don't want to eliminate all this beautiful line that the watercolour did when I popped the green on. So it's about having a balance and just carefully thinking. So now I'm doing much more of a upright stroke. So I'm starting to recreate that front lavender by doing an upright dab. So I'm not twisting. So after telling you to twist, I'm now telling you not to twist, so that you get a bit more of a pattern of forming. It's giving you that bit more of a sense of perspective and distance. So I'm trying to create this front section a little bit more. You can break into this a little bit. It works quite nicely to break into a little bit, so don't feel that you've got to not break into it. You do want to break it a couple of times just to give you that less defined line. And I'm going to just bring a little bit more in places. Now do not eliminate all of that rose you've just put in. You can concentrate by coming down those green lines. Those green lines are more for shadow, so that's going to give you a bit more sense of depth. I'm giving a little bit of a twist, but not too much. Do a few more random dabs. You can see how this is building up and becoming really effective. I love cobalt violet, it's such a lovely colour. Just going to very lightly break through some of the rose, but I'm not covering it up, I'm just very lightly taking a bit over. See all this coming together now. I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. What I've got here is a blob of cobalt violet and a blob of ultramarine, and I'm taking a bit of water in with my round number 10. So now I need to just darken up in the foreground. So this is going to give me, hopefully, a nice bluey purple. I might need a little bit more cobalt violet in there. Just squirt a bit more of the cobalt violet there. You don't want it to be too blue, but you need it to be a different purple to the one that you've been using. That's better. Just a bit warmer. You could take a bit more rose in. That would make it. Take a tiny touch of the rose in as well. So you're just making a darker purple if you haven't got the colours that I've got. Going back to my sponge. I actually haven't rinsed it from the last time. That's absolutely fine. And I'm going to pick up some colour, and then I'm going to do that same upward stroke. So I'm dabbing down, not changing. At all. I'm not moving that sponge, so I'm just dabbing till I'm getting that upright stroke. So it's starting to create that foreground lavender. You can squeeze it flatter. Just coming all the way along. It actually works quite well to be a little bit heavy-handed in places with this. And what I'm going to do is pick up a number 6. And then I'm just going to dab in a few places as well. So if you think light at the top, and then wider as you come down, so dab, 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 dab. I'll show you on here. So I'm going dab, 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 like that as I come down. It's getting a nice shape. We're just building up in the foreground. You want a variety of heights. Try not to end up with too much of a pattern, so conscious all the time of trying to space them so they're non-uniform. You don't feel like you're seeing a pattern happening in any way. I'm going to go nice and high up here. And then I'm going to take a dab of this purple mix into this green mix. I want this to be darker. I'm just blending this through and end up with two colours here. You see this? Nice and dark. I need my rigger, which was here. It's underneath. There we go. So this is another brush I'm introducing. It is a number 2 rigger. So this is great for doing leaves and grasses. What I'm going to do again is twizzle around. That's because I just find it easier to paint on a downward stroke. And what I want to do is start to build in. Some little bits of additional leaves in that foreground section. So try not to make them too spidery. It's very easy to do one in isolation, go around like this, and it looks a little bit like a spider. So just break through that and imagine that there's other ones there overlapping, so that it doesn't become too obvious that you've got these spidery bits. It's literally just like doing grasses. The more detail you put into a foreground, the more that's going to set the distance, because there's less detail there. So all of this is adding to the composition. So this other mix is the purple with a little bit of the green in. I can just bring some of that through in places as well. Just think non-spidery as you're doing this. Just twizzle this round again. If I come into the lighter green, you can still see some of this through. So I'm going to take some of that across as well. With it having the lemon yellow in, the lemon yellow is opaque, so that tends to show a little bit more. Just pop in a few little bits in. All of this is adding texture. Working really nicely. Just going to give my sponge a bit of a rinse. Bring that up on the kitchen towel. I'm just going to dip in. Just bring through. What I don't want is for this to look too obvious. So there's an element of me just knocking this back a bit with a bit of sponging. Just to bring that back. Give that a bit of a rinse out. Just going to dip into this little bit of cobalt violet that I've got left and just bring a little bit of that through just at the bottom as well. I think that's working really nicely, so I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. You need to make sure that it is dry before you come on. So I've got something here called a masking fluid rubber, which you can buy online, or masking fluid remover, and it just saves your fingers. I'm just going to take out these extra bits of light now. See these up here. It's really nice and effective. Always make sure it's totally dry before you do this, otherwise you will rip your paper. It just brings it off and it's just so pretty. It's a really pretty effect. It's like little glimmers of light appearing there. Okay, so a few finishing touches now. Often when you do something like this, is you think, oh, it's a little bit, in places it looks a little bit too blobby. Masking fluid's one of those things you love to hate. So we can break that up with a little bit more sponging. And then I also want to look at this because it's a little bit too dark for me, so I'm going to show you what I will do to fix that. So if I find a nice bit of the sponge and pick up a little bit of the cobalt violet, you can use the cobalt violet or you can use the rose for this, and I can just break through, so I'm very lightly dabbing. I'm not eliminating everything that's there, so what I'm trying to do is break up some of the blobby bits. I don't want to cover it up because there was no point in me putting it there if I cover the whole thing up. So it's just breaking that up a little bit, lightly dabbing. You could do this with just a little brush. It's actually quite nice to leave some of them circular. It looks like little glimmers of light, and already that looks better. It's just a little less blobby. That's the only way I can describe it. And then I'm going to use some Chinese white. So I've got a tiny blob of Chinese white here. I'm going to use some of this cerulean blue within it. Use up what I've got on the palette. And a tiny bit of the lemon yellow. So what I'm looking for is a lighter colour that will cover, and that's working really nice. I want a bluey colour, quite a bluey. Lavender's quite bluey really. And just take a little bit of the ultramarine in. Bit of an experiment here. Make sure it's blue enough. Yeah. I'm going to go back to my sponge, which I've cleaned and dried, and I can just bring some of this within the foreground. It's just got a little bit too dark for me. Just shows you this happens to the best of us, and it's how you fix it. So I'm just going to lighten it a little bit. I was a bit heavy-handed with the blue in the last mix, I think. Just lighten up that area a little bit. I use my rigger. Just paint on a few lighter strokes. So as well. just to break through some of the darkness. Classically, you don't always have to use Chinese white, but I don't really stick to the rules. I don't think there are any rules. I'm quite happy breaking them. There you go, that's much better. Okay, so I'll dry that one off. And there we are. So it's all mounted up for you to see. A nice, simple but really effective lavender field with a few techniques. There's a little bit of linear perspective in there, a little bit of using masking fluid to create those layers, sponging, wetting wet washers, and some soft trees in the distance. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe, share, leave me a comment. I'll pop another playlist here and a video link here, and I shall see you next time. Bye.